Hey folks, back for another Masculinity Monday, talking about David once again. I'm starting to wind down some of the content I wanted to do on David. As always, there will be plenty more to come after that, but David just shows us so many sides, so many good things, and we've looked at his positive example, but we of course have to look at the negative example. And so that, unfortunately, is one that's all too familiar, his sin with Bathsheba. We're going to look at that in just a minute. As always, I'm going to encourage you, like the video, leave a comment if you have one or you'd like to request a topic, and be sure you're subscribed here on the Focus Press channel. I also, if you want these in your inbox, I send them out through my website, jackwilkie.co. So make sure you're following, make sure you're plugged in with those opportunities, those outlets as well. But let's go ahead and get into the text that we want to look at here with David and his sexual sin. 2 Samuel 11, pretty straightforward. If you're a Christian, I'm sure you've seen it before, but then it happened in the spring, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the sons of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David stayed at Jerusalem. Now when evening came, David arose from his bed and walked around on the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful in appearance. So David sent and inquired about the woman, and one said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" David sent messengers and took her, and when she came to him, he lay with her. And when she had purified herself from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. Of course, it snowballs badly from there. David tries to cover it up by trying to get Uriah convinced that it's his child. When Uriah is too honorable for that, he makes sure to have Uriah killed. And it goes from bad to worse. And of course, David admits it. David repents of it, but there are consequences and there's fallout from it the rest of his life, really. And so David has this sin. On the other hand, we have the example of Joseph in the scriptures. We have a young man who does better. And this is another man tempted way more directly. David's out walking around and just sees a woman and thinks, I've got to do something with this woman. Somebody will get her for me. Joseph has the woman come straight to him, Potiphar's wife, in Genesis chapter 39, and he turns her down, but not just once, but over and over. It says that he was handsome in form and appearance. His master's wife looked with desire there in verse 7 at Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and has put all he owns in my charge. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" As she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her to lie beside her or be with her. And then, of course, there's the pivotal moment where he goes in and she tries to grab him. He escapes without his cloak and turns it around and says that Joseph was trying to come after her rather than the other way around. And so you see similarities here in a compare and contrast kind of way of, again, David was not, it says when the kings go out to battle. It's an interesting comment. The writer there in 2 Samuel 11 doesn't say a lot about that, but it's interesting that he threw in that kings go out to battle, but David didn't. He's walking around on his roof, he sees this woman, he pursues this woman, and everything falls apart from there, whereas Joseph is doing his work. Joseph is there, minding his business, going about his day. The last chance that she gets with him, it's because he's working in the house, getting some things done while the others are out, and she sees her opportunity. But Joseph is busying himself. That's a great way to avoid temptation. Idle hands are the devil's workshop, as the old saying goes. And David shows us that. But he also has his priorities in mind, says, I can't do this. I've been given all of this authority, the responsibility by my master. But then he says, I could not do this great evil and sin against God. He's looking to God. David in that moment just thinks, I want to do what I want to do. Starts asking around, who is this woman? How can I get a hold of her? Pursues it, makes it happen, and then starts the cover-up. What I really want to talk about, though, is, number one, there's the importance of not doing the sin itself, and there's the importance of avoiding sexual sin, whether it's physical sexual sin or the pornography addiction that is so strongly affecting so many Christian men, the majority of young Christian men, church-going men. It is rampant in the church. It is an issue. There are people watching this, I'm sure, that have dealt with the problem or currently are. We need to not beat people over the head for it, but we also need to make it clear it has to stop. This is something you have to address. You have to have the Joseph mindset to run and get help. We've got great resources here at Focus Press. My brother Joe specializes in helping people out of this addiction. He wrote a book on it. He's got a podcast. We've just look up Getting Out of Porn at Focus Press. Really good, useful material there. But I say all that to say Joseph, it led to him being thrown into prison, but he was a responsible man. He was a responsible man in prison. That responsibility kept on going until he was second in command of all of Egypt, as the story culminates there toward the end of Genesis. Whereas with David, the sin that he has here, his life, if you read through David's life as documented in the scriptures, it's all going pretty well up to a point, this point. And then afterwards, there is the rebellion of his son Absalom. There is where he numbers the people. He's kind of prideful and trying to see how big his army is, and God punishes him for that. And even when Solomon comes to power, there's a little bit of a skirmish for the throne, and they don't want to give it to Solomon. His one of his other sons doesn't. And so David's life that had gone so well starts to fall apart. And so as we talk about masculinity, number one, for your own sake and for the sake of the sin problem in your relationship with God, you have to address it. You can't continue on with it. But if you're going to be a husband and a father, or if you are a husband and a father, the other side of it, that it's not just for you and God and your relationship, the moral authority issue is such a big deal. If you have this ongoing sin problem, you know you don't have moral authority. Your wife or your kids, and even if they don't know about the problem, it comes out in other ways. Your ability to have moral authority, your ability to draw a line in the sand and say right is right, wrong is wrong, and do what you need to do what you're supposed to do. And we see with David, that moral authority starts to crumble when this thing happens. In fact, interestingly, I talked about Absalom last week. The Absalom fell apart. His coup worked. What it came to an end is when he did not listen to Ahithophel, who was David's wise advisor, who turned on David and started advising Absalom, and would have given Absalom the advice he needed to complete the takeover. Why was Ahithophel, who used to be with David, all of a sudden with Bathsheba, or with Absalom? Because he was Bathsheba's grandfather, if you look at the lineages. Wise man, a counselor of David, turns on David and is working with Absalom. Not too long down the road after David with this sin with Bathsheba, you can start connecting some dots there in the text. Very interesting how that works out. That moral authority is such a big deal. And we're not even talking about ministry and eldership. You look at the qualifications for elders, you really need that moral authority, but just in your own home, just in your own life, your own self-respect, knowing of what you're doing with sexual temptation, what you're looking at, what you're pulling up on your phone or on the TV or computer, whatever it may be. Make sure that part of your life is right. Everything else we talk about with masculinity, of taking responsibility and your own health and your the work you put in and all of that, it all goes undermined if there's this problem that's ongoing and it's not being taken care of. So just a big lesson there from Joseph. Do things Joseph's way. Don't do things David's way. Make sure you've got that part of your house in order. That part of your own life in order. If you're not married, if you're not don't have kids yet, if you're not at that point in your life, and this is a problem, it's a struggle, now is the time to address it. Now is the time to confess it, get help, accountability, whatever it may be. Get out in front of it so you don't ever have that question of moral authority. It is such a big deal. It is arguably the biggest issue in the church today, especially for men. Make sure you've got that under control, or it's something that you are actively addressing and not letting it take you down. So that's this week's Masculinity Monday. I've got another feature I just filmed coming for later this week, just more stuff to populate YouTube. I found some old articles that I think would be pretty useful, so make sure you are subscribed here to the Focus Press channel, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.